Week 14 is in the air, and let me tell you something. The professor is excited. And why? Is because Week 14 is usually as you embark on your journey into the playoffs.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
Yeah, the playoffs. That's exactly what we're here to talk about today. Week 14, and if you're still watching this, that's a great sign because that means your team is in the playoffs. So, pay attention because the professor is about to share a little knowledge with you that can help you win your league this year. School is in session! And our first matchup of Week 14 is the Thursday night game, which brings us the Denver Broncos at the Oakland Raiders. Honestly, most of the Broncos you're going to want to start against a weak Raiders defense. Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas. I even start Eric Decker this week, even though I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he'll get you about average points, but he'll score you some points. Even Noshawn Moreno, who's filling in for the injuries at running back, should do well against a porous Raiders run defense. On the Raiders side of the ball, they're going to be behind. Palmer's going to have to throw, but I don't really like him that much against a tough Broncos pass defense. Not a fan of any of their receivers. The only one I like is Brandon Myers. That guy's been on fire at tight end lately. And if you're looking for a risky play in the playoffs to try to pull an upset, Darren McFadden's supposed to be back. High risk, high reward play. You may go with him. Our next matchup brings us to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Cleveland Browns. On the Chiefs side of the ball, honestly, there is really nothing to like except for maybe Jamal Charles. The Browns' run defense is not that great, so you may start him if you have him, if you don't have any better options. On the Browns side of the ball, you got to like Trent Richardson because that's pretty much almost all they got. Josh Gordon, another one of those high-risk, high-reward plays. Against a porous Chiefs defense, he could have a big day. So if you're looking to try to stun or pull an upset in one of your playoff matchups, Josh Gordon may be your player. And now we have the St. Louis Rams at the Buffalo Bills. Honestly, on the Rams side of the ball, I think Steven Jackson will have a much stronger week than he's had the past couple of weeks going against a Bills run defense that is not that great. Givens at receiver has been stepping it up, giving Sam Bradford somebody to throw to, but he's really a risky play. I'm not a huge fan of really any of the Rams receivers. The Bills side of the ball, C.J. Spiller, Fred Jackson, who do you go with? Honestly, you can play either one. They're going to get you points. I think Spiller gives you the touchdown threat, whereas Jackson will give you that yardage threat. And, of course, Stevie Johnson's come off a couple strong games. He should do well against a Rams pass defense that is a little bit soft. And that brings us to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you've been listening to any of the news, they've announced that Nick Foles will remain the starter for the rest of the season, which means no more Michael Vick. Last week, he actually didn't look too bad. Jeremy Maclin, I would give the start to, and Selleck, I actually may give the start to because they've got a little bit of chemistry now playing with this guy for a few weeks. They looked a lot better last week. Bryce Brown at running back, where did this guy come from? If you've got him on your league, the Bucs run defense is pretty tough, so be careful. He likes to fumble, but I think you kind of got to start him. The Bucs side of the ball, this week against the Eagles, who don't have the greatest defense, I like Freeman, I like Doug Martin, Vincent Jackson, and Mike Williams, and I even like Dallas Clark. I think they should have above average games. And that brings us to the Atlanta Falcons against the Carolina Panthers. Falcons side of the ball, they have a very good offense. You've got to like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Roddy White, and of course the old fella Tony Gonzalez at tight end. Michael Turner actually had a decent game last week. Panthers' run defense is decent. It's not the greatest, but he splits too much time with Rodgers. I probably don't start either of the Falcons running backs this week. Panthers side of the ball, Cam Newton probably gets a start. But honestly, look at quarterback. You may have a better option if he's your starter. You may have a bench guy on your team that's better than Cam Newton this week against a tough Falcons pass defense. Other than that, on the Carolina Panthers side of the ball, there's not too many people I like. That brings us to the Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Tough divisional game. Should be a lot of defense in this one. But unfortunately, the Vikings offense just isn't going to be enough to really score you too many points. I think Harvin's still going to be out. They don't have a great wide receiver core. Kyle Rudolph's been, back on fire like he was at the beginning of the year. So he may be a viable tight end option because he's really the only option they have other than the monster, Adrian Peterson, and he's been phenomenal this whole season. So obviously you start him even against a tough Bears defense because you never know when he could bust out an 80-yard run play. Now, Bears side of the ball, I like Cutler and Marshall. That's probably one of the greatest quarterback-receiver duos this season. And other than that, I don't really like anybody else on the Bears. And now we have for you the Baltimore Ravens at the Washington Redskins. This brings us a dynamic defense with the Ravens against a very dynamic offense with the Redskins. RG3 going up against that tough defense. Honestly, you can't bench him. The guy is really unbenchable because he's always going to score you an extra 8, 10 points, maybe 16 points just with his legs. So you've got to start that guy. Alfred Morris has been on fire, but against the Ravens, you might flip a coin on that one. Other than that, I don't really like too many of their receivers. I think if anything's going to be done, RG3 is going to have to do it with his legs. And on the Ravens side of the ball, to be honest, Washington's pass defense I think is underrated. I do like Ray Rice. Joe Flacco should be about average, and I think Anquan Boldin will be the receiver that's going to step up for the Ravens this week. And that brings us the Dallas Cowboys at the Cincinnati Bengals. Think about it. Bengals are big tigers. Cowboys carry guns and shoot stuff. This is going to be a great game. This is going to be a shootout. Honestly, I think the wide receivers in this game on both sides of the ball are going to score a ton of points. I think the ball's going to get tossed around like a football because, seriously, that's what you toss around a lot. So, listen, Romo, I think he's going to have a good game. Bengals defense is tough, but they're going to be behind. He's going to have to throw. Dalton should have a decent game. Honestly, Des Bryant's been on fire. Miles Austin looked pretty good last week, and I think he's only going to look stronger. A.J. Green, if you're looking to steal a game and you're going up against a tough matchup in your first round of playoffs and you want to try to steal one and you need a sneaky play, look at Armand Bims on the Cincinnati Bengals. Other than that, I'm not a huge fan of either of the running backs in this week. And now that brings us the San Diego Chargers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is pretty tough, and for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of really any of the San Diego Chargers. The Steelers' run defense is going to shut down the run game, force them to be one-dimensional. They may even be behind, so they'll have to pass. Phillip Rivers does not seem to work well under stress this year. Really, the only one you may start would be Malcolm Floyd. On the Steelers side of the ball, is Ben Roethlisberger finally going to play? I believe he's going to finally this week, and if that's the case, then I actually do like Mike Wallace. Brown is kind of that's a gamble. You could start him if you want. And, Dwyer seems to be the running back that's emerging as the main guy there, but still, I don't like him enough to start him against a tough Charger run defense. That brings us to the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Titans side of the ball, Chris Johnson's finally approaching 1,000 yards. You may give him the start. The Colts' run defense isn't that great. The receivers, maybe you give Kendall Wright the start. I don't really like anybody else on that team. Colts side of the ball, Andrew Luck's been on fire the last few weeks. I think he'll continue to be on fire against a soft Titans defense, which means Wayne, Avery, and Hilton all should have above-average games. Not a huge fan of Vic Ballard this week. For some reason, I just don't think he's going to touch the ball that much. And that brings us to the New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguar side of the ball, as of late, with Chad Henne at quarterback, their offense has looked a little bit better. Rashard Jennings is out. MJD may finally be back, but is he going to be 100%? That's going to be one of those high-risk, high-reward plays. I also like Justin Blackmon and Cecil Shorts this week because the Jets are not the defense they used to be. Jet side of the ball, I like Sean Green this week because the Jaguars' run defense is not that good. Plus, Sanchez got benched last week. They started Greg McElroy, whoever that is, and honestly, I think if he's healthy, somebody named Tim Tebow may be getting the start this week. And honestly, if he does, I actually think you should go find him on the waiver wire and sign him. Because if he starts this week, he may start the rest of the season. He may be a big contributor in your championship game. And that brings us to the Miami Dolphins at the San Francisco 49ers. If you watched the 49er game last week, it was all defense, and somehow they ended up losing. So guess what? Against another defensive Dolphins team, they're going to come out angry. And guess what? The professor has one rule this season, and it's do not start anybody against an angry 49ers defense. Even if you have Reggie Bush, who I've liked most of this season, 60% of this season to be honest, I didn't like him this week. He will get one lucky play, but guess what? Is that one lucky play going to get him a touchdown? I'd rather find somebody else on my team to start this week than him against the Niners D. On the Niners side of the ball, same thing. The Dolphins defense is pretty tough. Are they going to go with Kaepernick or Smith at quarterback? Because of that, really the only one that I like on that team would be Michael Crabtree. He's actually been on fire about the last 6 weeks. That brings us to the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. So on the Cardinals side of the ball, who's going to start at quarterback? Is it going to be this Lindley kid? Is it going to be Skelton or Kolb? Who's going to start at running back? I mean, is Benny Wills back? Is he healthy? Is it going to be Howlings? Larry Fitzgerald has been horribly inconsistent this year. I mean, who's going to play for them? Then I think about it, and it doesn't matter. They're playing against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have a really good defense, and they're playing at home. So don't start anybody on the Arizona Cardinals. Seahawks side of the ball, really the only one you start is Lynch, because I think Sidney Rice got a concussion last week. I don't know if he's going to play this week. I don't really like a lot of their other receivers. Really Lynch is the only one who gets the start on the Seahawks. And now that brings us to the New Orleans Saints at the New York Giants. Well, here's one thing I can guarantee you this week. I can guarantee you that Drew Brees will put up more points than he did last week. That's because it's pretty much impossible to put up less points than 3. So anyways, I like him this week. Even though he is going against a tough Giants defense, I think he will bounce back well. I think Darren Sproles will actually do well now that he's getting healthy. It's going to be tough to pick between their receivers, but you always got to like Jimmy Graham, and I do like Lance Moore this week. Giants side of the ball, Manning's been looking better. He hasn't looked, 100% better, but you may give him the start this week. The Saints defense is not that good. They love to get into shootouts. And with that in mind, you got to start Victor Cruz and Hakeem Nicks and even Martellus Bennett at tight end. Our Sunday night game brings you the Detroit Lions against the Green Bay Packers. Now, both of these defenses are a little bit suspect, and both of these quarterbacks have been trained to carve up defenses with precision like laser-cut diamonds. Now, that means I do like Stafford. I do like Rodgers. On the running side of the game, I do like LaShore, and if they start Starks again, I actually think he'll do all right. On the passing side of the game, wow, Calvin Johnson, Megatron, has finally been Megatron these last 5 weeks. He is on a tear. You've got to start him. Pettigrew's been doing good. You got to start him. And, Jordy Nelson, I don't know if he's going to play after getting hurt last week. So if he doesn't start, then you got to go back to Jennings and Randall Cobb and whoever else they got on that Green Bay team. Like even Jermichael Finley may get some action in this game. I kind of like him. Our Monday night matchup brings us the Houston Texans at the New England Patriots. Can you say game of the week? Yeah, I can. I think this is going to be an outstanding matchup. Now, I also think it's going to be a little bit more defensive than people think because that Houston Texans defense is good. But they have not faced anybody in any offense like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You got to like Tom Brady. I actually am not a huge fan of Stephen Ridley this week going up against a tough run defense in the Texans. But you got to like Welker, Lloyd, even Edelman with Gronk being out. Brady finds other people to get the ball to. Texans side of the ball, I think Schaub will do all right. I don't think he's going to do amazing, but I think he'll put up slightly above average points. Arian Foster should do really well. Andre Johnson, you got to start him regardless, and he should put up above average points for you. Owen Daniels at tight end, I actually think he's going to have a special game this week. Thanks again for watching us here in Week 14. And good luck this week as you embark on your playoff journey. And God bless you and your fantasy football team in this year's playoffs. Now, don't forget, if you do have a question about next week's show, being in playoffs and maybe even your championship game, ask us a question and post it in our comment box below. And as always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for future updates, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Tune in next week where I'm going to show you how to make a real-life version of the game Angry Birds using a tennis ball, 3 of the red kickballs that you used to play kickball with when you were a kid, 2 sides of ham you'll get from your local butcher, and a few dead pigeons you find out back.